What do these decor ideas have in common? A mirror over a fireplace, an arrangement of 3 candles, a floral centerpiece on a dining table, and pendant lights over a kitchen island. They're all perfectly lovely.
But they're very predictable. Don't get me wrong, we all love classic design staples, but sometimes we want something a little more unique, something that reflects our personality. So today I want to share 14 unexpected home decor ideas that will have people saying, wow, I've never seen that before.
Architectural salvage can add character and a unique aesthetic to your home. I used an old door to create a counter on top of my washer and dryer. I also hung a chippy window frame over the laundry room window for a rustic touch. And I turned an old cornice piece into a shelf to create an unexpected vignette on an odd wall separating the kitchen and library. I purchased this leaded glass window for just $25 because one of the panes is cracked. To hang it, I attached 2 sawtooth hangers on the back side, and I'm going to hang it in an unexpected spot over the doorway between my kitchen and dining room. I cut a strip of painter's tape to the length between the center of the 2 sawtooth hangers. I folded and creased the tape in the center and then lined up the crease with the center of the doorway. I placed the tape on the wall and then added nails at each end of the tape. I also added a small nail on the front center to hang a small wreath. Well, it's actually just a candle ring. Architectural salvage isn't always building materials. I picked up 2 vintage glass shades at the thrift store, and I'm going to use one as a vase. I pulled out a thrifted stand that likely once held a glass bowl and placed the shade inside. I think I'll spray paint the stand gold to dress it up. Sometimes we stumble upon interesting items but pass them by because we don't know what we do with them. I just buy things that I like this old table leg, and figure out what to do with them after I get home. I added a sawtooth hanger along the bottom, but I didn't center it. Instead, I tried to guess its center of gravity. Then I hung it upside down to create a small shelf, just big enough to hold a wool felted bird. Found objects don't have to be old. I recently bought this sculptural head filled with potpourri at HomeGoods for $12.99, which is much cheaper than heads that are sold empty. I think it's real concrete. It's quite heavy, but it had been painted gold, which I didn't care for. I wanted it to look like concrete, so I painted it with a coat of Waverly's mineral chalk paint. Once the paint was dry, I applied white wax using a wax brush to get into all the grooves and crevices. Then I wiped away the excess wax with a rag. Although I like the look of a plant inside a head sculpture, we've all seen that before, so I'm going to do something a little more unexpected. I filled the head with styrofoam and then topped it with half of a Dollar Tree foam ball. I bought the ball to use on a different project, but I ended up using something else, so that's why it's been painted white. I used a good amount of hot glue on the bottom of the ball and around the edges to hold it in place. Then I began hot gluing moss over the foam. I bought a huge bag of moss at HomeGoods a while back, and it has lasted forever. Next, I pulled out my butterfly stash, including these yellow silk ones attached to some Dollar Tree greenery. I stuck a piece of heavy green wire into the plastic hole on the underside of the butterflies and then pushed them into the foam ball. The other butterflies all had foam bodies, often with a flimsy wire attached that was not sturdy enough to puncture the foam ball. So I pulled it out and instead pushed in a heavier piece of wire, adding a drop of hot glue to make sure it stayed put. I added these butterflies in various spots until the moss was almost completely covered with the butterflies. So you'll have to let me know. Do you prefer the butterflies or do you prefer a simple faux plant? You can create unique decor for free by using items from your yard. I enjoy working with sticks. In fact, I've done a version of this project before. I love the look of faux flowers or leaves hot glued to sticks and arranged in a vase. I think it looks so realistic and high-end. But today, I'm going to do something a little unexpected. I'm going to use just one large branch and place it on its own without using a vase. To create lightweight blossoms, I pulled apart some thrift store flowers, removing the plastic center. I hot glued one section of the flower to the branch. Then I added a drop of hot glue in the center and pinched the petals together. Once all the flowers were added, I cut the leaves off a small greenery scrap and hot glued them on. Sometimes I added a leaf next to a flower, and sometimes I just glued it in a random spot. I also hot glued the fuzzy flower centers to the branch to add some interesting texture. They reminded me of the buds on a pussy willow. For this next idea, I took a small piece of driftwood and a leftover candle stand from a thrifted fireplace candelabra. I was actually able to screw the end of the candle stand into the wood enough to hold it firmly in place. You could use it just like this as a piece of sculpture, but I needed a little more. So I hot glued a succulent in the top and a few greenery stems and moss to some of the crevices. I think this looks so expensive, but I used items left over from other projects, so I made it for absolutely free. When lanterns first became popular, they were often quite expensive. So instead, I bought old lighting fixtures at the Habitat Restore and removed all the electrical wiring. If you have an oversized lantern or bird cage, filling it with books creates an interesting and unexpected display. Here's a little tip. An easy way to make a newer book look vintage is to run a sander over the spine, and this doesn't damage the pages at all. You can fill it full of books or leave a little extra space at the top to add a few other unexpected decor items. Several years ago, I gutted an electrical chandelier and added candles to it to hang over my dining room table. My dining room ceiling is filled with pot lights and no electrical wiring in the center for a chandelier. I painted the chandelier with white chalk paint and I'm just tired of that look. So instead, I'm going to hang this rusty metal lantern. It's not meant to be hung, but I was able to attach it to a chain. Then I added 3 battery-operated candles that have a remote control. Unconventional lighting fixtures can create visual interest and serve as a room's focal point. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you may remember that I installed these lantern lights just a couple years ago. There were originally pot lights over the island, so I also had to first install a converter kit. I wasn't planning on changing out these lights, but then I came across these 2 antique chandeliers that I just had to have. I thought they would add such an unexpected elegance to my kitchen. I'm not a licensed electrician, so I don't want to advise you on how to change out lights. Although I hung the chandeliers myself, a licensed electrician who just happened to be working on another project in my home very generously added wire and chain so that the chandeliers would hang low enough to be hung over the island. He used some special connectors that unfortunately were red, so I needed to paint over them so they would be less noticeable. I hung this vintage lantern in the back hallway after we moved in, but now I want to give it an unexpected update. I turned off the circuit breaker before I took it down, and then I began taking it apart. I unscrewed the top and bottom knobs so that I could remove the glass. The knobs were really what was holding the entire thing together. I put all the small parts on a piece of cardboard and spray painted everything with a light green paint called eucalyptus. I even spray painted the chain and the wire running through it. I let the paint dry overnight for a hard finish. The next day, I put everything back together without the glass because I had one more thing that I wanted to do. I had ordered some gold bird cabinet knobs off Etsy, and I was going to attach them to the lantern. I mixed up the 2 parts of JB Weld 10-minute epoxy. I feel this is one of the best adhesives when joining metal to metal. I used a popsicle stick to stir the epoxy and spread it on the bottom of each bird. Once I had a bird situated where I wanted it, I used a piece of painter's tape to keep it from moving before the epoxy had dried. I let it sit for a couple of hours before I hung the light back up. Once it was hung, I realized that I hadn't painted both sides of the ring that holds the canopy in place. So here's a little trick. Take your can of spray paint and spray a little bit into the lid. Then use a brush to touch up any spots that you missed. Well, what do you think of the green? It's definitely unexpected. What do you think? Should I paint the birds green too? I just can't decide.
Are you like me and starting to feel your age? Taking care of ourselves is even more important as we get older. And so recently, I've introduced AG1 into my daily routine.
AG1 is a daily nutritional supplement packed with 75 essential vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients. That's right, I said 75. This includes micronutrients for overall foundational health, antioxidants to support the immune system, adaptogens and B vitamins for energy and mental clarity, and pre and probiotics for gut health. It's simple to use. Just mix 1 scoop of powder into 8 to 12 ounces of cold water. Mix well and enjoy. It's a great replacement for the first or second cup of coffee. Once opened, refrigerate it for optimal results.
I genuinely feel healthier and more energetic since I started taking AG1. And if you'd like to try it, just click on the link in the description box below or scan the QR code in the bottom left and you'll get a free 1-year supply of vitamins D3 plus K2 plus 5 AG1 travel packs.
Clocks are one of my favorite decor items, and I don't care whether they work or not. Some of my favorite clock projects in the past include a wall clock that doubles as a shelf, a clock that I added to an old suitcase, and, of course, the grandfather clock makeover with shelves. I had this clock face left over from a wood clock that was falling apart, so I repurposed it as wall decor. I thought I would attach the clock face to an old rusty lantern. To make the roof even rustier, I used the Modern Masters Metal Effects paint. You brush on 2 separate coats of the brown primer. You follow that with 2 coats of the iron paint. And when this is dry, you lightly spray it with the rust activator. Wait 5 minutes and lightly spray it a second time. There was a latch on the open side of the lantern so the clock face wouldn't lie flat. I could have removed it, but instead I just attached it to the opposite side. I used Gorilla Glue and a dab of hot glue to hold it while the Gorilla Glue dried. Now I could easily add a battery-powered clock since the back side is open. Baskets can be used in so many ways as both decor and storage. But here's an unexpected idea I bet you've never seen before. A few years ago, I bought a small record player so my husband and I could play the records we had saved from our childhood. But the record player was in a cabinet, so we rarely pulled it out. I found an old picnic basket that was large enough to hold it. I ran the cord through the back of the basket, and I put the lid on the bottom so the records could spin without hitting the sides of the basket. Of course, I had to include thrift store finds, since thrift flips are kind of my jam. I thrifted this ceramic bowl because it was a nice size, but it didn't really go with my decor. To make it look similar to those paper mache bowls that are so popular right now, I tore several book pages into small pieces and began decoupaging them to the bowl. I brushed Mod Podge to the bowl, placed a small piece of paper into the Mod Podge, and then brushed Mod Podge over the top. I did the inside of the bowl first and let it dry, and then I turned it over and did the bottom sides. After it dried, I brushed the entire bowl with a coat of Mod Podge Hard Coat for extra durability. And to dress it up, I applied a floral rub-on transfer inside the bowl. This floral transfer is from the IOD Brocante package. I also recently thrifted this small silver shelf. You might have seen a recent project when I hung a basket inside a vintage frame. Well, I wanted to use this little shelf in a similar way. This vintage gray frame once had beautiful bubble glass inside until it fell off my mantle. I was so disappointed, but it is still a gorgeous frame. I wanted the shelf to somewhat match the color of this frame, so I played around with dark gray, black, and silver acrylic paints. I didn't achieve a perfect color match, but I still think it coordinates nicely with the frame. I have several more ideas that I didn't have time to include in today's video, so let me know if you'd be interested in seeing another video on unexpected home decor ideas. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and here's another video I think you'll like.